Hello, sister-in-law.
Hi.
I told everybody in the intro that you are my sister-in-law, and the reason that I wanted to have you on the podcast is mainly because you kick women's asses, and you work really hard, and we're going to talk about your story and how you got into fitness, but your kind of main thing is helping women get over this fear of doing really hard things and lifting heavy weight, and well, we have a personal story about what were they called? Bicep jacks?
Bicep jacks. Doing a jumping jack while doing bicep curls at the same time.
Yes.
And you said, why?
Why would I do this? This is not functional. This is probably, 18 years, 17, a long time ago. And we were at the gym together, and you had evolved, you'd started personal training, and so we're like, okay, personal train me, and we went to the gym, and she had me doing bicep jacks, and I was looking at her with side eyes, and
That's just the folly of my youth. I mean, it's not necessary.
Okay.
So I guess I was a show-off. That's what happens when you're young, so whatever, it's all good.
So what happened, what brought you to fitness? If I think back to when we first met, so again, you are my sister-in-law, you're married to my brother, and when we first met, you and my brother were nowhere near anything to do with bicep jacks or gyms or anything like that. And now you are the epitome. You had a poster in the Lululemon store. So she is a fitness influencer. She is amazing. So
Stop it some more. Oh my God.
What got you to where you are now?
So you're absolutely right. Like when I was young, I was, athletic, and I did swimming team, track, and all that kind of stuff. And then in my 20s, I kind of got away from fitness. Towards my late 20s and, into my 30s, I had a membership at a big box gym, and I'd go and do step aerobics once every 2 weeks and then be like, here's my fitness. And then after we got married, and your brother and I have been married for 23 years, together for 26, I think. And then we decided to start a family, and we have a beautiful daughter. She's 19. We're proud of her. That's probably my greatest accomplishment right there, is my kid. And in my mind, I'd always kind of envisioned having a bigger family, maybe 2 or 3 kids. And so when my daughter was a toddler, we tried to start expanding our family, and unfortunately, that did not work out for me. I had no trouble getting pregnant, I just couldn't stay pregnant, so I had multiple miscarriages, and it was traumatic for me. I can talk about it very easily now, I can smile about it, but at the time it was devastating. And sometimes the miscarriages were in the second trimester, sometimes in the first, and so after the last one, I was like, I'm done. I hated my body, and it was not that I was 400 pounds and look at me now. It was that my body was not functioning the way, for all intents and purposes, that I wanted it to. So I felt really, really bad about myself. And so a couple of things happened. I was at my lowest point, and you gave me a book about the power of manifestation and positive thinking, which I know is like woo-woo, whatever, but it works, so I don't even care. So that happened, and then I don't remember if it was you or someone else said, you should do the P90 videos with Tony
P90X.
Gordon. I was like, P90X, ooh, what's that? So I turned the video on, and I was like, this guy, I can't, he's just too much. But I watched the video, and then I write down all the notes, and then I went to my big box gym, and I would walk into the weight room. There's all these meatheads, and they're looking at me, and I'm like, oh God, and I was still kind of pregnant looking, but I have a lot of grit. So I went into the weight room where I really didn't feel like I belonged, and within about 2 or 3 months, I started to see that my body was changing, and as a result of that, I was feeling strong, and I also felt stronger mentally. And so I kind of had an epiphany, which is kind of cheesy, but I thought, if this amount of exercise in such a short period of time has made me feel so much better about myself, I'd like to become a personal trainer. And I knew from the get-go that I was going to be a personal trainer that specifically wanted to work with women in their homes, because I know how intimidating it is to walk into a gym and feel like you don't belong there. So that's exactly what I did. I became a fitness instructor, and then I followed that with personal training, and I started a business back on the east coast of Canada, which is pretty far from where we are now. It's like the polar opposite. But it really it worked, and it was a very successful thing for both me and my clients and my participants, and I wouldn't change a thing about it. So I know it sounds a little hippy-dippy, but this really sad thing that happened in our lives turned into something that has been this major, major gift in my life today. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah. I remember, I obviously was part of that whole evolution, and being on the East Coast and we were on the West Coast, we didn't see each other that often. So I wasn't seeing necessarily the changes until one time we were there. We would usually go for a couple of weeks each summer. And I remember you were in the kitchen, as you love cooking, and you were, I don't know what you were making, but I looked and I was like, what? Your arms, what happened to your arm? They were just like, I couldn't, it was crazy.
Every day is arm day for me, every day. Yeah. I'd skip legs if I could, but we don't let friends skip leg day. So there's a story that I tell, which I'm sure my clients are so tired of hearing me say it, but there was a movie when I was younger that really had a very profound effect on me, and that was Terminator 2. And so when she's doing the pull-ups, I was like, that's what I want to be able to do. I can't really do that still, but I can do push-ups, and I can do a lot of things that make me feel strong. So, when people come to take my class and they ask which weights to pick up, and I always tell them to pick up something heavy. I'm picking up 20s and 25s for bicep curls. That's what makes me feel strong, and that's what kind of inspired me.
Yep. Linda Hamilton, I also still am. I really want the bicep vein. That's been like the thing that I really want.
Yeah, the big vein is always it's always a good one. I got one here. I got one in my neck. Sometimes on my forehead.
Depends on the day.
Right.
Yes, I remember Linda Hamilton. The other was Lost. That Evangeline Lilly. Also, I'm a big
jacked.
Arm day all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you start training clients, and you're training. You're going to gyms. You're also you're renting community halls. You're running fitness classes. You had a gym in the house, and I remember whenever we would come to visit. Yep, we would do the Glazier Vopni Olympics, and the kids would get in there, and we have many photos of our children dying on the floor because Auntie Melissa has done things that were too hard. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so picking up heavy weights, I want to talk about that because that's a big part of what I'm trying to build confidence, especially in the population I work with women who have maybe been told they can't lift anything heavy anymore, or they shouldn't, or it's going to make things worse, or maybe they do have some symptoms when they do it. But there was a really cool piece of research that she's actually Canadian, but she lives in Australia. She's a pelvic floor physical therapist, and she, in this over 4,000 women, or just under 4,000 women, and a subpopulation of this study talked about people with prolapse who were lifting heavy weights. Again, most people think they shouldn't, or they can't, or they don't want to. And in this group, they had heavy, moderate, and light. And the people lifting the heaviest amount of weight had the fewest prolapse symptoms. So it's not talking about if it's improving or worsening, it's just the symptomatology, which is usually a big driver for what holds us back sometimes. But so I rely on that study a lot when I'm trying to encourage people, especially in the phase of life of perimenopause, menopause, which is a huge piece of my community. We need to really be concerned of our muscle mass and our bone density. So when you were training, especially a new client, and what did they, if they see a heavy weight, what is their resistance, or what did, like the wide eye that you just did, how do you get them to feel more comfortable with that?
Typically, in my world, and I train women anywhere from in their their 20s up until their late 70s, and they're pretty beastly the way they train with me, like in a good way. I'm not talking CrossFit or anything like that, but I do encourage people to pick up heavy weights, whether it's in my class or when it's one-on-one. And typically women, they get the eyes because they're scared of getting bulky, and I'm like, okay, there's not a dumbbell in this gym that you're going to pick up that's going to make you bulky. You got to take some kind of supplement that's going to make that happen to you. And so for example, I teach at a private country club here in Southern California, and what has happened is that golf club rather, women are picking up heavy weights with me, and it's improving their golf game or their pickleball or their tennis or whatever. So the proof is in the pudding for them, and they're walking around and they're proud of themselves because now they can lift a 12-pounder instead of an 8, and they're not running around looking like some juiced up meathead, right? So I always encourage people to, of course, barring injuries, and you know, I'm not going to ask you to pick up a 20-pounder if there's something wrong with your elbow or, you know, your wrist or whatever. The other thing, thanks to you, that I started doing a long time ago, especially with classes, and I have to kind of do a little qualifier at the beginning of each class or at the beginning of an exercise. If I'm asking you to do jumping jacks and that doesn't work for you, or jump squats, I will give you a modification. Don't do these things if it makes you feel like you're going to pee your pants. Honestly, I'll say that, and at first people are like, you know, they don't really know how to take it, but they listen to it because it's true.
Yep.
So thanks to you.
Well, thank you for preaching as well, because I think that's a big thing, is especially in a group class, everybody wants to do what the teacher's doing, or everybody wants to do what the hardest version is, and sometimes they feel a little bit of pressure, but there's the fact that you are saying that and bringing it up, I think is so comforting and normalizing for people in this, because there is a lot of people who are leaking or who have these symptoms that they are just kind of masking and then feeling like if I just push through, maybe I'll get stronger and then it won't happen anymore. So
I don't want people to feel uncomfortable with that. You know, that's why I give so many different options. I think, as, you know, any good instructor would do that. But I mean, yeah, they've learned it from me, and I know that it's hard at the beginning, or they might say, well, I don't like doing push-ups, or I don't like doing burpees, or whatever. Well, guess what? It's not a punishment to be able to do those things. It's something that you get to do with your body, which I think is an extraordinary thing, and we kind of tend to look at, you know, whether it's lifting heavy or doing HIIT or whatever circuit class or whatever, it's like a punishment, or you get to reward yourself with a certain food or something after. It's just like, no, you're not a dog. Don't give yourself a treat like a dog. This is something we get to do. And my people have heard me say this a million times. You're in here working out like a complete badass. I don't care if you're 70 years old or 50 or 25. And there are people walking past this room with the glass wall, and they're going, oh my God, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that. So it's a privilege that we get to do those kinds of things. And we have to always meet our people where they're at. Like, again, I'm not going to force someone who has a prolapse or an injury of some sort to do something that makes them feel uncomfortable or that is dangerous.
I always use, in my community, people will say, you know, they'll make a comment on a workout or an exercise and they'll say, I can't do this one. And I always say, ... yet. You can't do it yet for whatever reason. But I want to try to, similar to what you just said, that we get to do this. This is not a punishment. And if we are not able to do an exercise for whatever reason right now, that doesn't mean that we don't have opportunities to get stronger. And we, right now in this phase of life that I'm in, watching my parents age, having watched my in-laws, it is becoming so much more, it's hitting home, I guess, is what I'll say, that the need to continuously move, the need to be able to get yourself out of a chair, get yourself off the floor. And for those people who want to travel, lifting something over your head to put in the overhead bin in an airplane, like we're training for life, really. Back when we were younger, we were training because we want to look good, and you know, right? And then our motivations change. But right now, it's really we need to train for longevity, and sometimes we have to do some hard things because that makes the other things that happen in life a little bit easier.
Yeah, it's exactly what I always say is what you do inside the gym. I don't mean to sound like a Pollyanna or an infomercial, but the things that you do inside the gym is what makes your life better outside of it. So think about, like for me, I go to the grocery store, and if you think I'm going to take 10 bags of groceries and do 2 trips from my car inside the house, you're kidding yourself. No. These are not feather dusters. I pick up those heavy weights so I can lift the heavy groceries. Or like, I went to the pet store and there's like a 50-pound bag of dog food. And it's all relative, you know, like what's heavy for me is going to be light for someone else or too heavy for someone else. But we all train where we're at. And one of my biggest pet peeves is when people are like, here's an exercise hack. Exercise is the hack, okay? We're not out there like plowing the fields and like, you know, doing whatever, like to keep ourselves fit. I mean, not most of us. Exercise is the hack. There's no like shortcut around it. Sorry.
Yep. Wholeheartedly.
Preaching to the choir. Yeah.
Yep. Preaching to the choir. So when you have, you've just said, you know, we get to, so you're instilling this life and longevity and this opportunity and privilege that we have to move our bodies. What resistance, other than I want to get bulky, do you have other resistance that people will say to you?
You know, it's for women especially, I don't want to get bulky, I don't want to get too manly. but also that it's intimidating to walk into a gym. So whether you're taking a class for the first time and you're like, everyone's looking at me. So those are the kinds of things that seem to get it in my people's way. But and I train with a very small population, and I have my entire career. I'm not a virtual trainer per se or anything like that. So my audience is pretty small, and I think I'm fortunate in that I have a way of making the experience not altogether unpleasant and accessible and welcoming. So I think fear of being in the gym and fear of turning into something you don't want to turn into are the two biggest things for me. And fear of like looking stupid because you can't do something. Yeah. But as I say, you can meet people where they're at, and you can show them different modifications so that maybe this is where they start, but eventually this is where they're going to end up.
Yeah. And you bring such an amazing sense of humor to your workouts as well too. So it's, the people who there's people you've been working with for years and years and years, and some of it virtually because they don't want to let you go because they love you so much. And
so sweet.
I don't disagree. But
I have this disease, Kim. It's called "Look at Me" disease. So it's perfect as a fitness instructor. I'm like, look at me. So as long as I can make people laugh for the most part, it kind of takes the edge off a little.
Yeah, and it's a good ab workout, right? Laughter is good ab workout.
Yeah.
How do you, I know you're not a nutritionist, but you've sent me a few books. So I send you the books like The Secret. You send me the, I don't know, what was it, like the paleo or something. You sent me something about the fasting mimicking. You send me all the different ways of eating. So, and both of us, I think, have tried lots of different ways of eating over the years. But what has worked best for you, or maybe in this phase of life where you're at right now, what works best? Or how do you then guide also your clients who are in different phases of life from an eating standpoint? Again, you're not a nutritionist per se. You're not crafting out meal plans, but generally people who are now working out, who are starting to get fit, they are going to have questions about what to eat. So how do you navigate that conversation?
I mean, I think in a perfect world, there's a different method for every body, and that could be cultural and religious, and there's a whole host of reasons why, people eat a certain way. I've been vegetarian in my life. I've eaten all the things, and I typically, for the most part, I follow a fairly low carb diet in the sense that I eat pretty high protein. I eat all kinds of carbs. It's just that they come out of the ground. They're vegetables instead of something that comes out of an oven. With that said, if I want to go and have a piece of cake, I seldom do. I don't crave those things, but I allow myself. It's not that I even allow myself. I'll do it without even thinking because it's not the end of the world. So somewhat low carb and high protein and high fat is what has worked best for me. I, for the most part, don't eat until around lunchtime, and I don't limit myself. If I want to eat 6 ounces of steak or 3 ounces of steak, I eat until I feel like I'm good to go. You know what I mean? And I just think that as a personal trainer, you have to be so careful because you don't want to put yourself in a place where you're helping someone get into like disordered eating, counting every single blueberry and then punishing yourself and saying, okay, well now I worked out, so now I get to have this again, going back to that, the dog analogy. But that's what's worked best for me. I do have a history of diabetes in my family, so that is another thing that works in my favor, eating that low carb. I don't feel great when I eat a ton of bread or sweets or things like that. But with that said, when I go on vacation for a week, I'll eat whatever I want. I do, and I don't feel bad about it because I know that 1 week is not going to completely derail the whole system. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So when clients ask me for assistance, I can guide them and help them with a meal plan. I'd never want to put someone on a meal plan that's going to set them up for failure. Like if you came to me and you said, well, here's your new meal plan, you're eating portobello burgers, and I'd be like, no, I'm not, because I don't eat mushrooms. Like, no. So I try to get an understanding of how they like to eat. Okay, you're having spaghetti here, you're having a steak here, whatever. And then I can craft something, which is within my purview as a personal trainer, that kind of mimics what they were doing, but maybe is a little bit lower carb version of what they were doing. So maybe one day has more carbs, today you have a sandwich, this day you're having salad, like that. It makes it more manageable, because if you feel like you're on this super restrictive way of eating, you're gonna be like, screw this, I'm done.
Yeah.
So
Melissa is an extraordinary cook for the people who are listening, and every time we've ever gone to their home, whether it's in California or when they were living on the East Coast, she would cook these extraordinary meals, and I would say, can you please send me the recipe? And I even bought the domain, can you send me the recipe? Because we had this thing, we're like, we can start a business here, like that you make extraordinary foods, and it was going to be, we were also going to, well, I was nudging you forcefully sometimes to start your blog, Wheatgrass and Wine.
Long time ago,
Yeah. One day it might still happen.
Yeah, you never
Okay.
know.
So supplement-wise, that's another conversation, or another question that sometimes people will have. And the world is, if anybody spends any time on social media, it's confusing about how to work out. It's confusing about what foods to eat. It's confusing about supplements to take or not to take. And so where do you land with regards to supplements? And are there ones that you would say, like, that you are bullish about, or do you just kind of just leave it up to the person?
There was a time when I would maybe take a pre-workout before working out, something that has a fair bit of caffeine. I don't do that anymore. I don't need it. I work out with my participants. That is my workout, and I get energy from their energy. So I don't do anything like that. I don't take anything after a workout. I usually just try and get some protein in my life. But someone suggested that I get into some creatine, so I'm doing that, as well as collagen. And the collagen, I haven't been on creatine all that long, but I am already, maybe a month, starting to notice a difference in my recovery and my strength. So that's exciting. And the collagen has been a game changer. I put a scoop of that in my coffee every morning. Number one, it tastes delicious. And my husband and I have both noticed a difference in our skin, feeling just a little bit dewier, and also in his eyeballs, because he gets dry eyes, and so the collagen seems to be helping with that as well. Whether that's a placebo, I don't know. I'm not a physician, but it works for us. So those are the two main things that I take. I eat a pretty balanced diet, and as you know, if you're doing okay diet-wise, if you want to call it that way, or method of eating, then you shouldn't really have to take a ton of supplements on top of that, is my view. Keep it simple is my motto. What's
your target for protein? There's, I think a lot of people who undereat protein, and I myself never really, I almost did a degree in nutrition. I've always been fascinated with food, but I think I've always felt like, I eat healthfully, but I've learned a lot more now where I really don't think that I have been super healthful and really conscious of, I think I was, because I was skinny, or thin, you kind of, it's like you have a free pass, so I could eat whatever I wanted, and I never really thought about actually the nourishment piece. It was just about feeding hunger or taste, that kind of thing. But I'm becoming quite bullish on protein. For those of you who are listening, go back and listen to my conversation with Dr. Stacey Sims, where we talk about creatine, we talk about protein as well. So do you have a target? Like, I'm hearing the 0.75 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight.
Yeah, that's what I'm aspiring to, and it's not easy to get that much protein in, but I do work towards typically a gram per pound of your goal body weight. So it can be a bit of I don't want to call it a chore, you just have to plan and prepare properly and pay attention to what you're eating and the right amounts. That's why I don't limit myself. I'm not going to sit down and be like, I'm going to have a piece of meat the size of, no, I just, I try to get in as much as I can. And that's what works for me. And that's what I try to advocate for my clients. And they can be a little surprised by that at first, but they come around to it.
You mentioned that you work out with your clients. So do you have, are those are your only workouts, or do you have workout sessions on your own? Like, what does a week of working out look like for you?
So my week of working out has changed considerably since we were doing bicep jacks, which was, I was going to the gym 6 days a week, like going hard, and then teaching classes on top of that. And I was much younger, so I could pull it off, and I looked like I did that too. And that ship has sailed, okay? I take a much gentler approach now, in the sense that I teach, anywhere from 4 to 6 classes a week, and that includes spin and arms classes and, basically boot camp style workouts. Nothing fancy. My body doesn't Zumba, so a lot of squats and push-ups and bicep curls and things of that nature. So my participants love when I work out with them, instead of just standing there and and I've done that as well. I've coached at places where I'm there to do 1 rep to demo, and then I'm monitoring it. But I love working out with my people, and they love working out with me. So I don't do a ton of cardio. I feel like I deserve an award if I could get on the treadmill and walk for 15 minutes because I'm like, oh my God, this is so boring. But give me some HIIT or some Tabata and we're good to go. So, Monday through Saturday, I'm teaching anywhere from 30 to 60-minute classes. And then if I feel motivated and I have the time, maybe I'll, walk outside with the dogs, or I'll go for a hike, or I will get on the treadmill at work for 30 minutes. And I never run, ever. I only walk, and then I'll crank up the incline, which gets you nice and sweaty as well. So, yeah, I work out 4 to 6 times a week, just not as hard as I used to, but I'm almost 50 years old, and I'm feeling pretty good about where I am strength-wise and stamina and that sort of thing. In the summers when I'm not as busy, I reactivate my yoga membership, so I go to yoga 2 or 3 times a week as well, which is really important for me, especially because of the thing in here. Always, and then also my balance. It makes a big difference with balance for me.
Yeah, and that's another big thing that I'm really, really trying to instill in the people that I work with, and coaching is balance. And obviously our core and our pelvic floor is going to play a role in that, but the importance of being able to stand on one leg or recover quickly if you stumble is so important.
I work with a population, as I said earlier, that is in their 70s and 80s, and one of the biggest fears that people in that demographic have is of falling. And I have clients who have fallen, and I've made videos to show this is what happens. You have 3 scenarios. If you're by yourself, and there's nothing around to help you. You're by yourself and there's something to help you. So there's all, the ways to get up off the ground. I think that's such a good point that you made. It's so important because it's a super empowering feeling for people to know that they can, if they find themselves in that position, that they can get themselves up without help.
Yeah.
It's so important. It could be the difference between your life or not. So.
Yep. We were just at our cabin on Gambier Island, and there's there's a woman there. Her and her husband have a place, and probably she said it was 7 weeks ago. She was there limbing a tree, and she fell off the ladder. Thankfully, she had put her phone not too far away, but she had broken her back. She didn't realize it at the time, but she broke her back and she broke her pelvis. And
oh my word.
We were not on the island, but there was an emergency chat, and we were watching, her basically saying, I've fallen and I can't walk. And so it was just like what happened afterwards was incredible from the community response. But we saw her yesterday walking with crutches, but still she said, I'm out walking. And a lot of people are amazed by that. And I said, that's what's going to help you get stronger. But and even with knee replacements, it's happening now too. Gone are the days where you wait it out, you lay down, we have to get up and move, and that's what ultimately is creating the strength and the adaptations that we want in our bodies. But I'm not sure her age, she's close to 70, I believe. So good on her.
I don't care how
scary.
old you are, like even if you're in your 40s, 50s and up, working on balance, like we can all fall, right? And especially if you're deconditioned, it's important to have that, body strength to get up off the ground. It's like when people say, well, I don't like doing burpees. Okay, well, guess what? Maybe it's not totally a functional exercise, but your ability to go from a standing position down onto the ground and get back up could save your life. What if you're by yourself and you drop a piece of medicine and it rolls under your bed, and that's something that you have to take to stay alive, and you can't get down there and then get back up? What are you going to do? I know that's a pretty basic example, but
it's
I'm not
true,
wrong.
and it happens.
Yeah.
Yep, it does. What would be, we're going to wrap it up, but a couple of questions. So what would be your tips or your top tips? I think we've kind of covered them, but if I've missed one, what would you say for women who want to age powerfully, who are thinking about longevity, who don't want to be the frail people falling, who want to have good balance? What would you say to them? Like, what are your top tips?
I think if you're looking at starting some kind of exercise program, you have to find something that resonates with you, that you know that you can be consistent with. So again, if you were to come at me and say, we're going to do Zumba 6 times a week, and then that doesn't work for me. What works for me is something that's different. So you have to find something that makes you feel happy, or at the very least, you don't completely hate when you're doing it. And whatever you decide on, I think and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I think one of the most important things is lifting weights. And so not everyone needs to do bicep curls with 25 pounders, but challenge yourself to pick up something as heavy as you can, because doing that is what's going to set you up for success down the road. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself sitting in a chair, lying in a bed, and I don't ever want to see someone that's in that position because it's too late and they didn't do something 20 years ago when you had the opportunity to.
Yeah. You have inspired me so much along the way because, one, I'm looking at the arms, of course, but I was always, even though I know the same information you do for hypertrophy or strength or power, all the different ways you can train, I still was always in the, kind of 12 to 15 rep and what could I do, and never really pushed myself farther. It was just like, and so I always kind of stayed where I never really improved or changed. And I'm grateful for watching you and you pushing me and coming and doing your boot camps when we get to come and visit, and they're always fun.
I like when we can push ourselves and push each other. I firmly believe in like an accountability system. I know people find this hard to believe, but I don't work out unless I'm with other people. That's what makes me want to work out. It kind of lifts me up and it gives me energy. There was a time when I was younger and I was doing all that crazy stuff that I could go to the gym for 2 hours. I'd rather poke my eyes out than do that. Let's get in, let's get out, 45 minutes, 60 minutes tops, and you can get a lot done. And yeah, I mean, we can do really, really, so when people are like in my class, like, oh my God, this is so hard. I'm like, I know it's hard, but you've probably done something harder than this week, whether it was emotionally or whatever. So just get through it. We can do this, and we're doing it all together. So
Yeah, the power in the community.
Yeah.
What's your final wrap up here? What's your favorite exercise?
Oh man, I'll be honest. I love push-ups because I think that that's an exercise as a girl. There was always this kind of feeling around push-ups, like you're doing push-ups like a girl, which makes me crazy. I don't care if you're doing. I do push-ups on my knees. Sometimes I do them on my toes. You want to do push-ups like a girl? Come at me. So I love push-ups because it's one of the best exercises you can do, not just for your arms, but for your core and your chest and the whole bit. So that's, on an emotional level, I think it's an empowering one, and on a physical level, I think it's a really important one.
Yep.
I'm
I
pretty
remember
basic.
the photo. But the photo you had when you were first starting your website and what have you, I think it was you down on the dock when you were living on the East Coast in like a perfect form push-up. I was like, okay, that's badass. I love it. It was awesome.
You're so sweet. Thank you.
You are amazing, and I know that you're not super active on social media, but I would love to, people can go watch a little bit of what happens in your life on your Instagram channel, and give you a little plug over there. But thank you for inspiring me and doing all that you do to help. Especially, I know you train both male and female, but I think the especially the female clientele. Obviously, that's the world that I work in. But I love what you're doing to help move the needle forward with getting women to do hard things and lift heavy things, and
You're always such a big supporter, and I appreciate you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mwah. Bye.
Don't leave.